So tonight we're going to be speaking to Stephen Larkin. Stephen Larkin has come up with some groundbreaking algorithms to find gas and oil under the ground. So using highly sophisticated tax breaks as well as crowdfunding, he has managed to come up with a great way to fund his startup. Hear the entire story tonight on Startup Grind.
My name is I'm originally from Eastern Cape in Mthatha. I live here in Cape Town in the CBD. I'm a wellness and fitness coach. You want to lose weight, you want to gain muscles, you want to maintain your body. That's my job, to put you on the healthy lifestyle. I'm here today to learn more about what other people are doing so that I can benefit as well and share ideas in terms of how can we move forward. So basically, yeah, I'm here to learn and make sure I'm serving the healthy lifestyle to other people around.
Right, hi, my name's Bruce Wade. I'm from a company called EM Solutions. We help entrepreneurs gain market access through developing strategy and products for them. I'm here at Startup Grind to meet new people, find out about funding today, and network with leaders of the future.
So tonight we're going to be speaking to Stephen Larkin. He didn't realize that when he met his UCT flatmate that it would literally change his entire life and his goals in life. He's gone on to create some groundbreaking algorithms to find oil and natural gases to be able to supply electricity to over 600 million African people. And in order to fund all of this mining activity and exploration, he's used some incredibly innovative tax incentives as well as crowdfunding methodologies. So guys, can you please stand, get up on your feet, give a massive round of applause for Stephen Larkin! Woo! There we go. Thank you for joining us. This is Rockstar. Welcome, man.
Oh, thanks for the fantastic. Whoa. Yeah, thank you.
What's up, there we go. You guys will see me. Alright, that's exciting. Rockstar, okay. Stephen, welcome and thank you so much for taking the time to chat to us tonight. The first question that we always ask at these events is, A, where were you born?
Okay, well, it's fantastic to be back in Cape Town because that's where I was born.
Super simple. Now tell us, there's a really, okay, before we get into anything, give us your 60-second elevator pitch of what is ANE.
Simple vision. We want to give the 600 million sub-Saharan Africans who don't have electricity currently to have electricity eventually from renewable means. Cheapest way to do that is not nuclear. It's to find natural gas and gradually replace it with solar. So ANE has written an algorithm that triples the probability of finding natural gas on shore at 1/10 of the cost of the competition.
That's very successful, actually knowing exactly what he does. So we're going to go into more details of how we actually get these things in algorithms, but let us take it back to where you were born and your childhood. And I know there's a great story of how you actually got into bishops.
Yeah. Although I'm very scientific, there's something very unscientific about my educational background. It might surprise you, but I was born with learning difficulties. I'm dyslexic. And when I was 8 years old, I was in a government school, Sweet Valley, and the headmaster said that you have to go to Vista Nova, which is for people with various physical and mental difficulties. And my father, who was one of the finest mathematicians of his generation, was disgusted that his son could not be brilliant. And he just didn't believe it. So my parents put me into Marist Brothers, which is an amazing school at St. Joseph's College in Rondebosch. And the headmaster of bishops, Anthony Mallet, who many of you have heard of Nick Mallet, it was his dad, he was fired. They say being the headmaster of bishops is the hardest job after president and the South African rugby coach. And he was fired, but having the amazing sense of vocation that he did, he decided to become a primary school teacher at Marist Brothers. And he gave a call to the then headmaster, John Sebastian Brinsley Peake II, who an old Italian and remarkable man, and said, listen, I've got this really exciting guy who I think bishops would benefit from. And there's this other guy I don't quite understand. So I got my parents got a call to say, do you want to write the scholarship exams? And I got 4% for Latin. I got 30% for Afrikaans, which apparently was a positive, because bishops doesn't do that. And maths always went to right. But the night before the final exam, my family was normal politically, we middle of the road, but under apartheid, middle of the road was left-wing and subversive and communist. We weren't, we were just people who thought, people entitled to votes and standard of living, but that was subversive then, now it's just normal. And my sister was brutally beaten up, and she was thrown into Paulsmoor prison. And she was in prison.
And she was beaten up by the police.
Yeah. And she was in prison when I wrote that exam. And I just let rip with left-wing vitriol that would have made Karl Marx wince. And this is the remarkable piece of luck. The guy who normally marked it, he was an Afrikaans master. I'm not saying he's racist or anything, but he was a conservative guy. And anyway, he had a bit of a drinking problem, and which is unfortunately not unknown to bishops. So he was off work, and they desperately needed to find somebody to mark the exams. And they found this hippie guy who deliberately cut his hair to get the job from the UK. And he read this paper and he thought, wow, man, this is alternative.
Sweet dude.
Yeah, I'm sure that was involved. And so I found that despite my 4% for Latin, I won the Bishop Scholarship, which is quite amazing, because if I could do it, to go from almost being forced into Vista Nova to being a Bishop's academic scholar, which literally changed my life, is quite remarkable. But it's a huge testimony to the amazing teaching of Marist and my father as well, who, he just refused to believe I was stupid. And it kind of, I was, but it kind of changed me.
So, you knew what to do. I love it. Okay. So tell us a story about your flatmates at UCT.
Yeah, and when you in Rondebosch, you're at Bishops, the area. Like, I don't know how many people here knew the Cockpit pub in Markwood, and we used to slip in there and have a few drinks, and we knew the scene. We were confident. When I arrived at UCT, I was an old hand, and it's strange how in those days, this was in 1991, there was a question there, are you prepared to share a room with a black guy? Imagine that happening today. But I said, no, I'm fine with that. And my flat, what they didn't ask though, and probably should have asked, was, are you prepared to share a room with a Jehovah's Witness? And, anyway, so I met my flatmate, he's a very quiet guy, and he came from Bushbuck Ridge. And he I like looked at Tugwell Hall, which I'm sure many of, particularly the guys know, 413 young women, many of them out of boarding school. And I looked at it, I said, well, what are you looking forward to? And he said, Steve, this is the first time in my life that I'm going to be able to study at night in my own room. Now, Saul Gibbon Micabelli is still a close friend of mine today. Failed his first year. And he really struggled because there's such an enormous divide between the old black DET education and what UCT wants to happen. But by the time he was doing articles at Ernst & Young, everybody wanted to work with him. He was quiet, he was efficient, he just got the job done better than everybody else. And now he's regarded as one of the leading experts in the world on computerized audit systems for mines. And that, to me, Gibbon is one of the most inspirational people I know. And yeah, I'm really grateful to Gibbon because that day, he told me, so he basically made me work out what I wanted to do. I wanted to give everybody else who didn't have electricity. And although I'm not in any way responsible for this, just think about South Africa's electricity journey. Many of you will know that in February 1990, a major event happened. I was doing an Afrikaans oral with Leonard Kaplan, who's not unknown in bishop circles, and I was singing a David Kramer song. And then we were told to watch TV. I'll never forget it, that Afrikaans moment. And President F.W. de Klerk said, the ANC ban is now rescinded. I'll never forget that moment and how gobsmacked we were. But let's look at it from an electricity perspective. At that time, only 38% of South Africans had electricity in their own home. Many of the people in this audience, I suspect, did not have it. And in 15 years, South Africa managed to go from 38% to 82%. You know, people like complaining about South Africa and saying how bad it is and how badly it's run. I'll have you know, nobody else in the developing world, or the developed world for that matter, managed to electrify their population so quickly. South Africa leads the world by a country mile in that respect. But there's still so much work to do because Africa, electrification rates are less than they were with South Africa in 1990. And I pretty much realized from Gibbon, that's what I wanted to spend my life doing.
So how are you going to do that?
Well, I need to go back a bit to explain how this project started. In fact, go back a step before that. I'm probably the only entrepreneur I know whose business failed in 2008 and it had nothing to do with the financial crisis. It failed purely on my inability to implement. It just so happened that I had a rock solid excuse. Trust me, the financial crisis had nothing to do with it. And so I was running an entrepreneurship scheme for black disabled entrepreneurs. And it was purely a non-profit thing. But one of the guys said, look, Steve, you don't know much about me, but I'm a disabled guy, and when Zuma used to carry all the guns around when he was head of intelligence in the ANC, they used to use me because I was disabled, and disabled people are stupid, especially if they're black, if you're an Afrikaans policeman. So he used to carry all these guns around, so he was really close to Zuma. And I said, look, I'm going to need to go back to the UK and start, something else, because my business has failed, and I can't see anybody hiring me. And as I said, no, Steve, I'll talk to a few people. And a little bit later, I was asked if I was prepared to run Medupi, which is one of the most complex coal projects in the world. To give you an idea, not many people know this about the South African electricity sector. We've got 4 out of the world's 10 biggest power stations. So, considering the fact that we, only number 19 in the world in GDP, it's surprising that there's such concentration of power generation. In fact, it's globally unprecedented. And so to run one of those at that time, it was an $8 billion project of 6 years more. Now it's a $21 billion project, and I think it's still 6 years more. And so I said, look, I'm very flattered and honored that you would consider me, but I really will mess it up. So I'd rather not. So they said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, to be honest, I think I'm going to go back to the UK and get a cost accounting job, which was quite attractive after everything I'd been through. And they said, well, no, but what can you do in South Africa? So I said, well, my dad was the true nerd. He started recycling with this really smelly compost heap in the 1960s. In the 1950s, he was a founder member of the Liberal Party and believed apartheid was wrong. In the 1940s, as an 18-year-old actuarial clerk, he wrote to the head of Old Mutual and said, you seriously need to get out of bonds into equities because inflation is going to become the biggest issue in my lifetime. He was right. But one thing he did is that, again, solar energy's been around for a long time, and it could have taken off in the 1970s. Jimmy Carter was in the White House, and he actually put a solar water heater on the White House in 1976, and with great prescience said, either this is going to start a revolution or it will end up in a museum. Unfortunately, Reagan won in 1980 and it ended up in a museum. And that caused a 2.5 decade stalling of a very promising solar industry in the 1970s and 80s. But my father put his first solar water heater on our roof when I was 3 years old in 1976. And it didn't work very well because my sister is extremely strong-willed and has an overdeveloped sense of aesthetics. It's probably the best way to put it. Said, no man, I don't want it on the front north-facing part of the house where everybody can see it. I want you to put it on the other side. So it didn't work very well. But at least the thought was there. So I've grown up being really passionate about solar, and I always will be.
Can you tell us about the algorithm that you developed and
Sure.
why you developed it?
Yeah. Anyway, so we were asked to build a consortium to build what was going to be and never did get built through corruption. The first utility-scale solar plant in South Africa. And this was in early days in what is now a very well-developed, well-run and well-regulated solar industry. But then it was the Wild West. And we signed the first power purchase agreements for utility-scale solar and won a very large tender to do it. But it all fell apart. But I started to get a reputation entirely unjustified in the land of the blind. The one-eyed man is king. And it was very much like that. And I was asked to do work in Lake Turkana, which is now an amazing Google wind project, where it's funneling the wind through the African Rift system. Absolutely incredible project. And I was asked to do some work around augmenting it with solar, which is mathematically fascinating from an intermittency perspective. And then I did some work in Jos, where sort of it's the Christian-Muslim fault line, but that didn't go so well because riots erupted and the next month after I left, probably because of me, 1,000 people died of sectarian violence. And then I did work in Chaparral to try and help the Ghanaian power sector. And then in 2011, I got a call from Ujomi, who was then Foreign Minister of Namibia, and said, do you want to try and do a math king in Namibia? And I was like, it would be an honor, because it's the highest levels of irradiation literally on Earth. And if solar should work anywhere, it's in Namibia. And we were awarded an African Innovation Foundation grant, the African Innovation Foundation, Zurich-based NGO affiliated with the UN, to come up with a pre-feasibility study. And I had this brilliant financial model that was going to cross-subsidize and do energy saving, and that would pay for the more expensive solar and the storage, and it was genius. Until we actually went into the detail and realized they were bankrupt in the middle. It actually was really stupid. And so I went back to them with my tail between my legs and said, my genius idea, well, it doesn't work. And so they were like, well, don't tell us what you can't do, tell us what you can do. Now, the reason that the genius idea didn't work is that solar is a lot of money up front. And African countries particularly don't have a lot of capital up front. And because they're perceived to be high risk, interest rates are really high. And as Einstein said, compound interest and relativity are the two most powerful forces in physics. And if you compound in dollars at 10%, which is the sovereign debt rate of Namibia, over 25 years, a debt that was 80% of their GDP, you've got Namibia bankrupt. So I needed to find a way of finding $12 billion I could afford to lose. And so they said, well, what are you going to do? So I said, well, I'm a solar guy, which means I view hydrocarbons in the same way that nuns view child prostitution. But the only way that you're going to finance this is by finding natural gas onshore. Now, I rationalize, and it took a month of hard thinking to try and justify going from solar into hydrocarbons. It really, the world is warming up. Anybody who doesn't believe that climate change is a problem, is quite frankly smoking something that's now legalized. Always Donald Trump. And or both. So it was not an easy decision for us. It really wasn't. But unfortunately, the numbers are so simple and compelling. To find natural gas would have cost 80 cents. To do it with solar would have cost $30. To do it with coal would have cost $5. Coal takes 8 years to build. Natural gas takes 2 to 3 years to build. So we said to them, look, you have to find, we can't do it, but you need to find natural gas onshore. They had natural gas offshore, but that wasn't going to work financially. They had to find it onshore. So they turned around and said, well, you go and find it. And I'm like, I don't do that. I'm not a geologist. I don't even like oil. In fact, I intensely dislike it. And they said, listen, we got you that grant, and give us some. And I was really reluctant to do it. But then I had a meeting with, and became very good friends with him, the paramount chief of the Herero people. It's the second biggest tribe in Namibia. Chief Rukako, who sadly passed away 2 years ago, was a remarkable individual. If anybody epitomized a chief in all the good ways, he did. He had an encyclopedic knowledge of every bloodline, of every relative. I mean, he immediately picked up Shakespeare's bloodline. I mean, we tease him because Shakespeare can trace his bloodline back to 1570, I think it is. He knew that. And even though Shakespeare's from, miles away, from Eastern Cape originally, or Lesotho originally. And he said to me, Steve, man, you must find this natural gas. And I said, why? And he said, well, it's going to take my people out of poverty. And he told me a story which boggled my mind. In 1905 to 1908, the Germans killed 75% of the rural population. And they used to live over quite a wide area, mainly north of Vinton. But they chased them into the Kalahari, where a lot of them live now. And they poisoned the wells. And I'll come back to that later. And they said, he said, listen, I tried to sue the Germans in 1990 for $3 billion for reparations. Some of you might have read about it because it's an ongoing problem today, how it gets resolved. If you can find oil under our patch, the Germans will come back and beg for the infrastructure from us. I promise you, and he was as good as his word, I will rally the government behind you. More importantly, I will rally the community behind you, and I will rally every chief that I have influence over, which was massive, to support you in every way you can to find that natural gas. And there are wonderful incidents when Shakes was leading teams to Namibia. I don't know if this is a big thing with bishops, but there were a number of masters who would sit there at square leg umpiring in a shooting chair in their suits on. I don't know how many of you have seen that phenomenon. Like, he was sitting there in the baking Kalahari sun with his shooting chair and a full-on suit on, and saying, no, go there, go there, go there. And it was quite remarkable how the local people responded to his clarion call for information. They found natural gas seeping out of the ground 731 times over 1 million acres. Now, when you've got that kind of advantage, you're in a very different place to an exploration company.
So you were able to use the local knowledge there to be able to
It's
find
of paramount importance to what we're doing. And in fact, the local knowledge actually enabled me to write an algorithm where I can pretty much tell the paraffin levels of seepage by looking at Google Earth now. That's how powerful they were. And
we're going to stop right there. We're going to stand up, spin around, hand that business card. Look at this man. That's a real entrepreneur. Very much. Very good, very good. Ladies in the back, gentlemen. All right, okay. So we can pick this up and we're going to switch over the complete tax to crowdfunding. You've used some very innovative things. I know Kevin Allen very rightly said that crowdfunding applies everywhere.
Absolutely.
How have you found crowdfunding? Why do you use crowdfunding and not traditional methods?
Okay, well, let's first answer that really quickly. In the oil and gas game, the tradition is, the funding formula is 4-1. If you put in the capital providers take 80%, the entrepreneur takes 20%. If we were going to involve the community in an investment structure, that wouldn't have worked. Secondly, we're using an algorithm which nobody else in the industry uses. We're not oil and gas people, we don't even like oil and gas people. So there was no chemistry. We were never going to raise the funding and we weren't going to try. So what we did, how this all started actually was, there was a Bishops and Rondebosch rivalry, and I'm delighted to say that 2 of the original funders are in the crowd today. How's it, Arne? How's it, Raj? And basically a very charismatic gentleman who I was at school with, Gordon Robinson. And I told him about the idea and I said, look, it's really risky, so it sounds great. Sure, the guys will love it. And 4 days later, they came up with R1 million. 32 of my mates from School and Rondebosch. It's kind of a Bishop's Rondebosch rivalry. It's beautiful. And we've since been able to raise about 40 million rand from that, from 400 investors in 17 countries. But then when you've got a little bit of money, it's easy to grow. So you can get grants. We've got a special program for industrial innovation, which I really need to emphasize. They complain that nobody from Cape Town applies. And they will, if you can raise a quarter, they will top it up to the other 3 quarters. And, you know, the 2 most successful companies on SPI was us, and I think we're going to break the record, and this other guy was a year below me at school called Mark Shuttleworth. That's how he got started. So you must really consider that as a, you know, as a way of getting going. And
how do we get in contact? Who do we get hold of?
just Google it. Yeah, special program for industrial innovation. And and they've got funding that they struggle to disperse to Cape Town. It's crazy. So it's there. And the next thing that we did was research and development tax credits, where the British government did a study that for every pound they give out in research and development tax credits, where they actually give you money back, and we've got a lot of money back from it. And you can even get like University of Cape Town or Stellenbosch to do it as a British company, and they can still claim these huge tax credit. It's amazing. They reckon that for every pound they give away, it increases taxes that they collect because the businesses are more profitable by 17 pounds. So they're not being generous, but it's fantastic for companies like us. Yeah. Now, in South Africa, we lobbied very heavily to say, we said to Pravin Gordhan, in 2012, we sort of invaded his London briefing in Old Mutual, and he was being all corrupt and talking about his stewardship. And a few of us put up our hands and said, why aren't you doing the British-style angel investment, which has raised £10 billion, absolute high-risk startup? Why are you not doing that in South Africa? There are 35 startups that got funded last year out of 1.7 million owner-managed companies who created 60% of their jobs, where there's actually 40% unemployment when you measure it properly rather than the 25%. It's a no-brainer. Why aren't you doing it? So they ignored me. And then we arranged that there was a whole wave. And he was really hacked off afterwards and sort of brushed us off and said, why did you invade our thing? And we're like, because this is important. And blow me, a couple of years later, he instigated a very generous tax break called Section 12J, where a high net wealth investor, if they put money into a boutique hotel, a junior mining company, a technology company, they can get 45% back from their personal or company taxes, which almost halves the risk. Now that's incredibly generous. It's very far-sighted of the South African government. It sickens me hearing all this negative stuff on social media, because actually there are things that the South African government is doing that's really positive. As a white, about as privileged as you get male, for me to have got all of this support from the South African government, don't tell me about BEE, because as far as I'm concerned, I'm as black as anybody here. Based on the support that I've got from the government. I'm not even in South Africa. So it's here, and basically we have crowdfunded in the UK. We've raised about £2.5 million, and then we've got little tenders, we've got the R&D tax credits, we've got grants. I'm really excited to say that our quantum gravity project, in conjunction with the University of Braunschweig, this was only announced yesterday, and the German government has said, look, we'll give you our best scientists, and the German scientists are the best in the world. They're just not high up on the citation rankings because they don't speak English. And they are paying 3/4 of the budget, giving us the scientists, and we own the IP. So, it's incredible the support that you get. When you go out there, you want to solve social problems in a responsible way. You'll be amazed how the checkbooks open, not just in private investors, not just
but also in governments and grants.
Any questions? No questions?
No, I have his card, so I'll speak to him later.
We'll speak to you later. Yes, Stephen. Just give me the microphone.
Stephen from Venture. Just wanted to know, so how does the algorithm, how exactly does it work? Just in layman's terms.
Sure.
And, you know, there's some speculation or that, you know, the algorithm, has it actually, have you found the oil? Have you started drilling? Because people are saying, you know, it's the wait and see thing. This thing hasn't been tested yet, so there's millions going in and stuff. We still don't know if it's going to work or not. So can you comment on that?
Yeah, sure. Exploration is an inexact game. You're never going to be 100% certain. We have not drilled yet. We're drilling next year when we list. And how it works is that we take data from satellites, from remote sensing sources, from airborne sources where you fly over the ground and collect certain data, and also data on the ground. And then there's 17 layers. It's like a cooking pot. You put them all in, and then the cooking process is the computer crunching away. And Madeleine from Microsoft did tell me to say that we're crunching it on Microsoft Azure.
There we go.
And so thank you, Microsoft, for your fantastic support. They actually have been amazing. She's not talking nonsense. We've got amazing support from them. And so it crunches it in, and the outputs of the algorithm are, we think it's probabilistic. So we think it's going to be a certain depth. We think it's going to be a certain pressure. We can tell the nature of the oil and gas based on the proportions of gases that seep to the surface. But anyway, sorry, I could see G looking disapproving because I'm really technical. But you're quite right. I mean, what amazed me is that we're starting to get bids where certain players are starting to get worried because it's cheaper and it's better if it works. And they almost, well, not almost, a couple of them have got to the stage where they're trying to jump in ahead of the competition, where they can secure the algorithm before we strike. Because if we do, there's going to be such a bun fight over it. Because the oil and gas industry has plummeted. $300 billion worth of exploration projects have been cancelled because the oil price is halved. So they're desperate to find low-cost sources of oil. So although we didn't plan it and we don't even like them, we couldn't have come up with a better solution in terms of our timing, because finding low-cost onshore is what they need, which is why they're prepared to take the risk. I mean, you're quite right in pointing out, it has not been proven, it has not been drilled. But I will say something, though, in terms of what we have proven, is that we tested it on 100 basins, on 6 continents, on 6,000 wells, where many of them were failures. Failure tells you a lot more than success does. And it's around about 70% when we've got all the data in. Now, I'm not saying that we're yet 70% certain, because this is an absolute frontier and it's an immensely complex geology. And you'll get to the 70% probability over a 10-well drilling program. So I hope that answers your question, but I do agree with you. It's early stage and it's still very risky. But the bizarre thing is that because the expected value of what we're talking about, and we're talking free cash of $20 billion, they're prepared to say, okay, well, if it doesn't work, we're prepared to lose a certain amount. And so it's just like a variation on the theme of exploration itself.
Sorry, when are you planning on listening?
In 2018, when we spud the first well, but we do not have the exact spud date.
Okay. Any other questions? There we go.
Thank you. Hello. I just have a question on the costings for this. You say it's low cost. How would that compare with renewables, with nuclear? This is a big hot debate we're seeing at the moment, the huge costs of the nuclear deal. What kind of money?
As part of the UN study, we did look at nuclear because Namibia has the 5th largest uranium reserves in the world. And quite frankly, nuclear is an offence to any cost accountant. Westinghouse, which gave us a small matter of alternating current and the electricity grid system today, designed by a not unknown scientist called Tesla, went bankrupt last month. And the reason it went bankrupt last month, after one of the most illustrious corporate histories in the world, was that they decided to invest with their parent, their Japanese parent, in nuclear power stations. They went 900% over budget. And this is America, where they watch their money and they're good at project management. Russian technology, which is pretty topical in this country at the moment for nuclear, the average nuclear power plant that has been opened in the last 10 years, do you know how long it took to build? On average, 28 years. So, quite frankly, 9.6 gig of nuclear will bankrupt the country. There's no doubt about that. Fortunately, the good news is that Russia are offering to finance it and will bankrupt them before it bankrupts us, because they're going to give up. So the chance of it being built are close to zero. So I hope that answers my opinions on nuclear. It's ludicrous. In terms of coal, you're talking about $5 a watt. In terms of nuclear, in terms of solar, that's a really interesting curve. And I'll tell you a quick story, I'll never forget it. On the 12th of March 1999, when I was an oil trader, we won't talk too much about that. The price of Brent crude went below $10 a barrel. It's difficult to remember that, but prices went up very quickly. At that time, 1 watt of solar, just to buy the cell, not the balance of system, was $15. So, if you roll on to now, 1 watt of solar costs about 70 US cents, and we're excited that oil is now under $60 a barrel. So in terms of the relative competitiveness of solar and oil over the last almost 2 decades, solar is more than 100 times more competitive than it was. And that curve is continuing to go in that direction. But, and there's a very important but here, battery technology is not kept up. When you include the levelized cost of electricity, including batteries, unfortunately, I would say it's about 3 times what natural gas is currently. But I'm an optimist, and the whole point of A&E, we are African New Energies, lots of different energies, is that we're going to create a carbon trust where we will reinvest in solar because it's going to become the cheapest alternative. Now, if we want intermittently supplied solar, in other words, it's not dispatched, the South African dispatch curve looks like Table Mountain. So it peaks in the evening, right about now. And the sun ain't shining as far as I can see. So if you're prepared to just dispatch during the day, it's competitive with new build coal. In fact, it's cheaper than that. But you're not comparing like with like, because it's not a base load, it can't deliver 24/7, and it can't deliver at night, which is where batteries come in.
Any other questions? One last one.
Hi there, Stephen. Thanks for an inspirational talk. My name's Rex. What about geothermal?
I love geothermal, and at the risk of being geeky, Kenya has a plant that runs 98% of the time. And geothermal, if you can find it, and I believe we can find it in South Africa for the simple reason that we've got places like Godini Spa, which is, it's geothermally heated water. We've got a place that's now called Bella Bella, but its old Afrikaans name was Warmbat. Why? Because geothermal heated the water. If we can find geothermal, it is a fantastic technology. The problem is that you face the same kind of exploration risks that you do with oil and gas, but you don't have the same financial upside. So it's very difficult to justify exploration budgets to drill for geothermal. And there's not the same understanding as there is for oil and gas, so you miss a lot. But I think if you follow the rift system in East Africa, geothermal has a vital role to play. The majority of Iceland. You know why most bitcoins are mined in Iceland? Because they've got so much geothermal energy that they almost give their electricity away free. New Zealand, the biggest producer in New Zealand, is geothermal. So I think one needs to view the energy sector as a portfolio. You never put all your eggs in one basket on the stock market. And energy is the same thing. There's definitely a place for geothermal. There's a place for solar. There's a place for wind. There's a place for energy saving. And I hope in my time there won't be a place for oil or gas.
Final question. When you're going to drill for your oil and gas, are you going to be doing fracking or what systems?
I loathe fracking. And one of the things that gives me intense satisfaction is that this algorithm will destroy the economic justification for fracking. I'll tell you why. If you frack a well, it costs 3 times as much to drill and complete a conventional well where it just comes out. You have to send down 65,000 litres of deadly carcinogenic substances which fracture the rock and release the natural gas. But because you're having to force it, your flow rates drop precipitously. You pretty much can plug a well after 2 years. So you only get out 10% of what you get out from conventional. And the reason that the industry does fracking is that fracking reserves are vast. South Africa's got 500 TCF, but they reckon they can only get 30 out. Okay, that's still a huge amount.
What's TCF?
3 million cubic feet. So a rule of thumb, to run a 1 gigawatt power station, South Africa's got about 45 gigawatts of capacity. You need about 2 TCF. So I mean, it could solve our problem from an electricity perspective, but it's not economically viable. The reason that people went into fracking in the first place was they were really bad at exploration. They struggled to find conventional resources. So I thought, okay, well, we know there are huge fracking reserves, particularly in the United States. We know we're not going to miss. And so even though the flow rates are terrible and the decline rates are even worse and it's more expensive, it was still worth doing. With our algorithm, where we make it easy to find, why would you want to frack? And it's important in the developing world. This is not just a South African problem, it's everywhere in the developing world. If you have an argument over do you put the environment first or do you put economic development and taking people out of poverty first, you're always going to pick the economic development one as a government. Rightly or wrongly, it always happens. So we knew that the only way we were going to win the fracking argument was to come up with an economically superior solution, and that's exactly what this algorithm does.
Thank you. I think, yeah.